Welcome to Primitive Archer TV.
And welcome back. We are continuing the bow that we started on episode 5. Looking forward to getting this one out to the salt flats. I'm cutting out the front profile right now and hoping to get 400-yard shot with this bow, or at least 350. Getting the handle shaped out, roughed out, and I got it over here to the belt sander, where I'm doing a little more fine tuning, getting rid of all the saw marks that are stress riser opportunities, and being careful to leave the tips wide for reasons I'll explain later. And right here I've got a problem where the stave is undercut, and if I leave it as thick as it is there, it's going to cause me a problem. So I'm going to have to bring that edge in beyond the line that I drew to get it thicker, but I won't bring it all the way to the edge on the opposite side. Now here I've got what looks like a bark inclusion. That was what that line was, defect on the stave. And there I am eating into the knot, trying to get past it and get it below the back of the bow. And right there, it's just a little bit below the back. We're going to get it further. Let's see, so we've definitely got the back of that, or the knot clearing the back by about half the thickness of the limbs. That's pretty good. And there, that bark inclusion is almost completely gone with a nice and fluid blending there. The knot that we were dealing with is almost a non-issue now. The inclusion is no longer an issue. I'm going to sand down the edges and round them off just a little bit. Looks like I'm doing a lot there, but I've got a very light grit sandpaper. And here you can see I'm just radiusing the edge. Sharp edges like to throw splinters, and we don't like that. So here, now while the limbs are straight, because we're going to put it in a deflex reflex form, I'm going to go ahead and trim off a lot of the excess off the belly. I'll make my life easier later on. Give a little flex test, make sure I didn't take off too much, and we got about the right amount of bend. Not upset with that. I got it on the belt sander, and I'm removing all the saw marks, and I'm grinding off where that splinter popped up on the tip when I was recurving. Give it a quick bend test. Now I'm going to scallop out the handle here to deflex it. So I've got a wooden template, and I use that to line out where I'm going to cut. And the handle here has an undercut on it, so the bow stave didn't want to stay steady. So I glued on a shim on a piece of scrap to hold the bow steady while it was underneath the bandsaw, allowing me to make this sweeping arch cut without the bow blank moving on me. Now that cut is made, I'm going to mark center line on the bow and mark center line on my deflex reflex call here. And I'm going to anchor the tips down because this bow, if you recall, has had heat treatment done to it because the stave, the limbs rather, were propeller twisted. That's about how much reflex we're starting with, and we're going to use that as a reference point for later. Anyway, when a bow has propeller twist and you heat treat the prop twist out of it, the propeller twist can come back if you don't have it anchored down the next time you apply heat. So anytime you apply heat, you got to have the tips anchored down. So here we're heating up the handle real good, tightening up the clamps as they'll allow us. I'm not trying to force anything. I'm just keeping pressure on it. And I need to move the clamps in further. So I made these blocks that are like wedge blocks. They sit nicely on the peaks of the scalloped handle. And back to heat treating. Like I said, just gently tightening up the clamps. I couldn't get the handle to move as much as I wanted, and I didn't want to force it, so I went to the fade to give me an additional area to heat treat to encourage some bend near the handle. Plus, that'll make that a more gentle sweeping curve than just a kink in the handle. And you see, I'm not wrenching down on those by any means. There we go. We've moved that about 3/4 of an inch down, which is plenty. Now I'm putting in the reflex and into my limbs there. Just doing a quick heat treat. I spent about 15 minutes per limb. And there were some cracks that formed and opened up. It's from the water that was still in the stave from when I did the recurving. So you just put gentle heat to start with, and then, throughout the heat sessions, the water will eventually evaporate and the cracking will cease to be an issue. Luckily, that seems to have only been in the belly. I just checked there; it's not. And there's no cracks on the back. So when you do that, you deflex it, the handle scallop no longer fits the stave. So I'm going to go in there and clean up the rough marks from the saw, then use a smoother grit to smooth out the inside of the handle. There we go. I've got a much nicer gap there by taking it to the sander, taking that handle block, and I'm just eyeballing where it's hitting and then removing a little bit, just light pressure, not really hogging any material off. This takes a long time. It took me about, I don't know, let's say an hour and a half to do this. And you'll understand the process as we go here. But that gap is definitely tightening up, and after a few more sessions on the belt sander, that's pretty good. I'm now going to switch over to looking on it through the side there, to holding it up to a light to see the light shine through, to see where the gap is and where it's not, where it's touching. And I've got that to the point now where I am using a piece of paper to act as a feeler gauge, trying to find out where it's going through and where it's not. And if it goes through in a couple of spots, it's fine. The resin that I'm going to fill that up with is a gap filler resin, but I do like to have the fit as natural and smooth as possible. And I finally got it to the point the paper really won't fit anywhere else through, and you can barely see light through the gaps. So I'm mixing up my favorite West System epoxy here. It works great. It's very strong epoxy. They actually use it for building wooden boats. Works great, that is, when you get the mixture right. I may or may not be guilty of that. And I'm going to apply a very nice thick coating there on both surfaces. I don't want a dry joint. Once again, I'm anchoring down the tips. And I'm just putting light pressure on there, just enough to hold it and get squeeze out all the way around. You see some is dripped out, but I did a large coating, but not all of it is being squeezed out. I'm just putting enough clamping pressure to make sure that the air bubbles are out. There's only 4 days left until the competition. I'll see you in the next episode. When the epoxy's hardened, we'll get it and get a string on it.